Hey, boneheads, this is Joe. This week, we didn't do a very good job of introducing our guests, so I'm recording this a little bit later simply because Steve, Neill, and the three of us just got in a conversation and just went before we could do a proper introduction. If you don't know who Steve Neill is, that's okay, but I know you know his work. He's a special effects makeup artist, filmmaker, puppeteer, model maker, visual effects, and artist, and all around just wonderful dude and a fantastic storyteller. He's going to tell a really good Oliver Reed story and a few others. He's worked on Fright Night, The Daytime Ended, Ghostbusters, Laser Blast, so many, Return to Swamp Thing. Settle in, check this out. You're going to love the stories. Welcome, Steve Neill, to Bonehead Weekly. You can hear my kids screaming in the back. Bonehead Weekly, it's our pleasure to have visual effects artist, creator, and just absolute mensch. Actually, we have only talked for a few minutes, so I'm going to hold off on calling you a mensch so far. But we've got Steve Neill. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And everybody says thank you, and I've still never, after doing all this, I listen to professional folks a lot, and I always think there's got to be something better than thank you for coming and thank you. But you know what I mean? Oh, James is finally logging on. So while James is logging on, we pride ourselves.
Hi, James.
Don't tell him to go to hell. And we pride ourselves in making, or at least asking questions that at least one or two that someone else hasn't asked. I was going through listening because you do your own kind of podcasting. You've done your own shows. You do a lot of interviews. So I was trying to find something that a lot of people haven't just beat the hell out of. And this is as close as I come. So please forgive me. But I have a copy of this little movie here.
I'm glad you said it because I was going to bring it up.
See this? That's an act. You know what this is, Steve? This is it okay?
Yeah.
Steve?
Oh, absolutely.
So
it's a fond memory because I love Toby.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where I'm going with this. So Spontaneous Combustion as a movie that I actually enjoy. This is I don't think it actually came out on DVD. If it did, I'm not for sure. I still have my VHS copy. When we had Mick Garris on the show, if you're familiar with Mick Garris, the director, writer, I always, because I never got to meet, I was supposed to meet Toby a decade ago. He canceled on something. It was right as I was starting to do, as we was explaining, we do this convention work where we moderate and interview people, and he pulled out, and he had his tendency to do that from time to time. He'd say, he'd do something.
Sure.
And he'd pull out of it. And I just want your best Tobe Hooper story, maybe from Spontaneous Combustion, whatever you'd like. If you don't mind talking about the movie and talking about Toby, I'd really appreciate it.
No, it's great. Steve Brooks, I got a phone call from Steve Brooks one day.
Yeah.
He was the effects supervisor on it. He's still in the business. He's still working like I am. And wanted me to come down. And I already knew Toby, but not well. He wanted me to come down and interview for doing Spontaneous Combustion. And I got the job that day. And I, went right home and very excited to work with Toby, because originally I was supposed to work with him on a movie called The Dark.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a Dick Clark production. And I'll never forget, going there for that job and getting it. And then I get called into a meeting with Dick Clark, who was a really nice human being. And I met Toby, he came in, he was going to direct it, but then they switched directors and went to Bud Cardos. Bud Cardos, ironically, directed my film, The Day Time Ended. I just hate that title. It wasn't mine. Anyway,
and you wrote that, right?
Wrote it and produced it, and
right.
Worked on the visual effects and everything. But I only got to spend a little bit of time with Toby, and I was like, well, here's Tobe Hooper. He's kind of an iconic filmmaker, better than Charlie Band. Sorry, Charlie. Well, not better, but just another one of those guys. But
right.
A little bit higher cut in terms of pictures.
Yeah.
And then I didn't, after he wasn't directing the film, I didn't run into him again until Spontaneous Combustion. Mm-hmm. And I had my first meetings with him. We hit it off just great. And of course I went home to make a life mask of Brad Dourif. When that video of us making the life mask with my late wife is actually on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And if you go to my channel, it's under one of my playlists called Steve Neill's Hollywood.
Okay.
And it's in there. and my friend Stan shot that. And he's the one that wrote the book recently about spontaneous combustion. So working on the film was hard because it was a low budget film with a very ambitious, large budget look. And Toby, he really liked to do the best he could possibly do with the money he had. And they built some really elaborate sets, the big bomb and all that stuff. But also I had to do a lot of makeup effects on Brad. As you know, I had his burning arm, the various stages of his burns. I worked closely with his son too, Tony Hooper, who is a really talented filmmaker, but he's kind of a recluse, and he still hasn't finished his Chainsaw All American Massacre film. But Tony was around a lot to help, and fantastic. We became, pretty much lifelong friends. So the film was a great experience. I mean, it was a lot of really late nights, and Toby just kept drinking the Dr. Pepper and smoking the cigars until 3, 4 in the morning. The dawn to be coming up. We didn't know how long we would work. It would just be like, well, we're shooting tonight. Mostly it was in the evening because Toby was a night owl. We all were during that period. And, we all had long hair and dark circles under our eyes, and, snuck off in the background between breaks to get high and that kind of stuff. And just everybody was doing it. And, but we had a really great time because it was very creative. We were all a bunch of crazy artists, really having fun with another creative artist, crazy artist, Toby. Yeah. So, and he basically gave me, carte blanche to do what I wanted to do up to a point. The first sculpture I did as a rough of Brad Dourif's makeup was very demonic looking after he was burned. So he burned in a way that he looked very devilish. And it actually disturbed Toby of all people. He said, "Oh God, that's too disturbing. Oh God, no. I just want a classic burn, like the skull showing and stuff." And that's why at the end of the film, you see half the face burned off and the skull showing and all that. Hey, it's his film. Whatever he wants, he gets. I did it. It was really a lot of fun. And we became friends after that. We stayed in touch. And I think really one of the best stories is one night I get a phone call, and it's been a while since the film, and it's Toby. He says, "Hey, Steve, you want to come over to the house and watch Twin Peaks with me?" I said, yeah, sure. Cause he had this big house in Beverly Hills, and he said, I'll have the donuts there, and, bring something nice. I said, okay. And I went over there expecting to be a whole bunch of people, and it was just me and his son.
Yeah.
And a couple of times Timothy Leary came in because they were friends.
Hold on. I got to stop you. So you're in a house with Toby Hooper and Timothy Leary.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I just wanted our audience, the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist, and Timothy Leary.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I was a huge fan of Tim's, and I used to go to all his lectures and stuff. I read all his books, and he called himself a test pilot. I think a lot of us were test pilots during those days, and test pilots of the mind. But when Toby found out I was a big fan of his, he had him come to the set, on Spontaneous a few times, and I just hung out with him and got to know him, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, when we were watching Twin Peaks, he'd poke in and he'd wave like that, So those were amazing times, and it just was so amazing to watch Twin Peaks, which was a great show, I thought. And he had a big pull-down screen and one of the early projectors, and that was the cat's meow back in those days to have something like that, because we all had projection TVs, and which we thought were so good. They were awful, 720 by 486, but whatever, we had fun.
It was better than the alternative 19-inch television.
Oh, yeah. The CRT, you betcha.
Yeah, it was better then. Yeah, a friend of ours, production designer Mick Strada, I don't know if you know him, talks about the back of the trailer. What was it, Chad, James, the 6 or 8 foot back of the trailer?
Yeah, the space that would be there. So the measurements that would be slightly off for creative
for the room
storage.
For the drugs. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, I haven't actually. I suppose there were some things kept from me, but not much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's his story he tells us. So yeah, I was just we're fascinated. Well, I'm fascinated by Toby, and I think it makes it worse that I've been able to interview so many people, but I never got to meet him. And I'm
Yeah.
often curious, do you think it's just because he wasn't Spielberg? Was the lack of being able to communicate, or was it what kept him from going to that next stage?
Well, Toby, to me, he was a really charming guy. He was a
Yeah.
real character, but he was very charming. He had a real charisma about him, and people tended to either like him or really not like him at all. There was really no in between. I had no problem with him. We were friends. We got along well. He loved filmmaking, was so passionate about it. And I got to say that, later on in the years, I was seeing him when I'd go over to see Tony, and he'd come in all the time. We'd talk and everything. But I'm pretty sure we were all well away from doing any of the crazy stuff we did in the 80s and 90s, and 70s. Meaning that we're all pretty clean, except for the occasional shot of tequila.
Right.
You tend to, when you hit your late 40s and 50s, say, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. And he was great. I mean, it really floored me when I found out he passed away, and the details, which never have been revealed to the public. Nothing bad, but I'm not at liberty to
I'm
talk
sorry
about what I was told, but it was just really sad that he passed like he did. And I don't know, that next level thing. There's a lot of filmmakers that never made it to that next level, but as far as I'm concerned, the work that they did as artists, as filmmakers,
Yeah, I agree.
that what level? I mean, they did great work.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. There's like this whole level where some film directors, go on to be another Spielberg, really, really notable and getting all the big budget films and stuff. But quite honestly, I'm not impressed by those big budget films. I'm impressed with the Peter Weirs and the, Toby Hoopers, and there's others. There's just some really great filmmakers out there, and they don't get those huge budget. I mean, Peter Weir did, obviously, with Master and Commander.
Yeah.
That was an incredible freaking movie. But most of his films up to that point were low budget. The Last Wave,
Yeah.
Pick the Hanging Rock, and several others. That those films are truly great. And so a lot of the greatest films I've ever seen have come out of filmmakers like that, with low budgets. Even Charlie Band's a lot. There's some really classic cool stuff there too.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, and the one I get asked about most is Laser Blast, of course. So
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess
and
you can think of Mystery Science Theater for that one. They kind of helped that push on that one too.
I guess.
But it was already, I mean, it was already a classic by that point. It was a cult
Yeah.
classic by that point. It's just that skyrocketed it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it did. It did. And most of the people that really loved the film had no idea I was even involved in it. I guess they can't read the credits, but but they didn't know I was the alien at the beginning of the show. So
right.
Yeah, there's that great picture of you on IMDb wearing the leather coat and the blue jeans and the big
Yeah.
pen that says "May the Force be with you."
Yeah. Well, those were the days, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and we'll lead into this, but it's kind of the same question I was asking about Toby. I feel a lot of Toby's. I feel people forget about Texas Chainsaw, and they think a lot about the poltergeist crap that we've heard about now for 40 years.
right.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really truly think it just, unfortunately, no matter how many times people come out and say, no, Spielberg was there every day. He had him breathing down his neck every day, but Toby Hooper was directing them. I feel like it just overshadows and people forget this is the man that gave us the best slasher film ever made.
Right. Yet they don't say that Spielberg was there every day on The Twilight Zone. Where was he with that everyday presence then, when there were directors directing his films? So,
Yep.
so I have big question marks go off about that, because that was just a terrible scene. And John Landis is another person I've known for a number of years. I fact, I recently had lunch with him and a few other people. And John's great. I mean, I don't know. We didn't talk about work. We didn't talk about what are you doing now, but
Yeah.
I know that whole thing with the Twilight Zone was kind of, he was thrown under the bus
Yeah.
by Spielberg's production. I'm not, I don't know for sure Spielberg singled him out, but let's face it, everybody was responsible for what happened. And that effects guy, I worked with him before. I forget his name, Paul something. I can't remember his last name, but he was on. I think he was on Laser Blast, but I also remember him being another film I worked on, and I remember being able to smell booze on his breath.
Yeah.
And he was known for this, and that charge he set off was way too big, and he took away all the air from the lift of that helicopter, and down it went. But John's career just kind of came to a halt after that.
Yeah.
After all the great things he did, and he's a really great
Yeah.
guy. I imagine him to be that irresponsible. So when they say that Toby didn't direct the film and that Spielberg was there every day, I don't have any facts about that. I mean, maybe it's so, but I've never seen anything to verify it.
Right. No, it's just, go ahead.
Toby directed. I mean, he was there. I mean, when I worked with him on Spontaneous Combustion, he was like working with any great filmmaker. He was really dedicated. He
Mhm.
worked himself to the bone.
Yeah. Well, but the same question to kind of pivot a little bit, and I know Chad has a question about. We asked Jim Wynorski kind of the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Why?
Jim. I did some movies with Jim. I know
Yeah, we
Jim
know.
well.
Yes.
Well, yeah. What was that movie with the where I wore the gorilla suit and made the zombie, Angus Scrimm? Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember the name of that one. We were thinking of
Island
Return
of something.
Yeah, we were thinking Return to Swamp Thing. So it's funny. We'll tell you, Chad will tell you a quick story just so you know that and by the way, Jim was great with us, but it took about 20 minutes to get past the curmudgeon.
Yeah. And so I'm going to tell you, and this is one of the reasons why I was excited to talk to you personally, is Return to Swamp Thing. And from a childhood, that was like one of my pivotal movies as a child. I watched it on loop on VHS over and over and over again. I actually wore out the VHS tape. It was like one of my favorite movies as a kid. And we were going to talk. I had tracked Jim down because I really wanted to talk to him. And he's in the middle of telling his story. And what happens? My entire setup fails on me and I have to scramble to get back on, and he's already past the story and I missed the whole thing. So I'm hoping as we pivot into, hopefully you can tell me a great story about Return to Swamp Thing.
Return of Swamp Thing.
Thank you. That my equipment doesn't shut down on me.
Well, I'd done a couple of films for Jim, and he was doing the film, and I had my small studio up in Granada Hills, which is where I worked on Spontaneous Combustion, and a lot of the films I did it in my in-home studio. Now I have a 2,000 square foot studio all these years later. I drive to work every day, I unlock it, but I just walked from my bedroom into the back shop, which was pretty good size for what it was. Jim had all these things he wanted, so we created them. And Todd Masters, who's my dear friend and who came to work for me when we were in Glendale as a very young man, and he just showed exceptional talent. His personality was wonderful too to work with. Todd did everything on location, and he did some of the effects as well, but he basically wrangled everything. Same thing with the Blue Monkey. Todd, I could fall back on Todd, continue on with another project, and he'd go on location. So the main stuff that of course, I didn't do the Swamp Thing himself. Todd did that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did do was like all the other creatures and stuff, the big-headed guy, and my favorite, the Slug Man.
Oh, yeah, the Slug Man's amazing.
Yeah, and there's pictures of me, you probably see on the internet, where I'm wearing the whole costume, in the shop and acting really silly in it and everything. But I was real proud of that one. That was really a lot of fun. That was entirely my design. So was the big headed guy, which was like a takeoff from the 6 Finger and Outer Limits.
Yep.
And other than that, I really don't have a lot of memory of it because I made all this stuff. They took it on location. They shot it, and that was it. And Todd would really be the one to talk to about that because on the other picture, I worked with Jim rather closely. And at the end of the day, because I was on set every day, and this was shot at Roger Corman's studio.
Oh, the old lumber yard.
Yeah, my gut would hurt because Jim is funny, and we just pissed ourselves laughing over the crazy stuff we were doing. What was that? What was the name of that movie? Can't one of you go online?
Hold on, Chad. You looking it up?
I'm trying to.
Raven Delacroix in it. You know, Raven with her big tracts of land and
huge tracts of land.
Yeah, exactly. Because Jim was always big on women with
huge tracts of land.
Would that be the Lost Empire?
The Lost Empire. Thank you very much. And then it Angus Scrim in it.
Right. So Steve,
because
I have a page full of notes here, and everything on here. I did not have the Lost Empire. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. That's a classic. Now, come on.
I apologize.
I would love to hear some Lost Empire stories. Yeah, so
go
please
ahead.
do share.
This one.
Raven missed and really did kick me in the nuts when I was wearing the gorilla suit.
Yeah,
and I had done a lot of gorilla suit work in Hollywood. I did big national commercials.
Yep.
I did shows like St. Elsewhere. Rick Baker was very helpful in getting my gorilla career started, and I made a lot of money off that because I was a SAG actor. And Jim's like, I got to put the gorilla in the movie. I just love the gorilla. I said, okay. So I have that whole scene, and Raven goes to kick me in the nuts, but she missed and really did kick me. When you see me going down, yeah, I was in pain. So that's one of the stories. But I think the best was really working on the set. Now, Angus Scrim obviously didn't stand for having his body cast and having this mummified, and I did it very kind of almost comic book style, the Mummy. And so when she beats on the face and the face comes off, that's actually another actor named Mike Hoover, and he was a friend of mine, and we cast his body, and I sculpted the entire thing from head to toe. But we also had that scene where the head gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that scene?
It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, the fake head, and they had the eyes and the face and everything moved in it, and basically cut a hole in the stage and the floor, and I could put my head up inside it. And there's this great scene. It's like, come back here, I'll mortify you, And I mean, Jim just started, busting out and laughter, the whole thing. And it was like that all the way through the movie, because it was campy and silly. So I really enjoyed working with Jim. I should have went on the swamp thing, but I had some other job I had to do next, and so I kind of went from one to the next.
I think that was shot in South Carolina. Am I correct?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. It would. So what's funny about Jim is I thought Chad was going to tell another story because he turned me down several years before, and Chad got him to do it. And he and Chad are on the phone setting everything, and Chad's like, "Oh man, he's so sweet." And then we started, and he was really a curmudgeon. 5 minutes later when he started, and then about 10 minutes into it, I think he just finally figured out that we knew his career. We weren't just idiots. And then he finally opened up. Does that sound about right, Chad?
Yeah.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, I know he had, but he he always made me laugh because he knew me and he knew I knew him, and so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. James, did you have the next question? You're ready for me to go?
Well, I'm sorry I got here a few minutes late, but I know that you have worked and been interrelated with Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, and so my understanding is you did some of the design of the Klingon forehead pieces for Star Trek 6.
No.
Okay.
Oh, that yes, yeah,
okay.
That. But my involvement with Star Trek: The Motion Picture is where that look began.
Yeah.
And I was there the day that look was born, and when Gene came in and talked to Fred Phillips and talked about the fact that the TV show, they didn't have the time or the budget to make the
Yeah.
Klingons look more alien. And what he wanted, and I remember right there, and he says, I want this look kind of like it's a vertebrae going up the back of the head and down to the forehead. And so Fred did a test makeup. We put a bald cap on a guy and built up mortician's wax.
Mhm.
And pretty much what you got was what we ended up having in the opening scene with the Klingons in the first motion picture. Ironically, they did have the money, but they didn't have the time. They kind of left all this stuff. When I came in, they'd already shot a lot of the film, and they needed to have these Klingons done right away, so we couldn't make them out of foam rubber. They were actually the first time that polyurethane foam, a BJB TC 276 foam, was used with the self-skinning foam to make the prosthetics. So they're wearing polyurethane prosthetics, so which was really cool. And Rick Stratton, Mark Siegel did most of the work for that. We were kind of Fred's eyes and hands because he was getting older at that point in time, and he really needed our help a lot. But on Star Trek VI, Richard Snell, who I can't believe also passed, brought me in because he knew I loved Star Trek, and he knew that Star Trek really started my career. Brought me in to sculpt Klingon appliances, and I sculpted so many that when I see the film, it's like, I think I did that one. There's one that looks like they did in the first picture, and that one for sure I did. And but there's quite a few others. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to be present on the set because they needed me back at the studio pumping out the prosthetics. Also, I was supposed to play one of the Klingons on the bridge, but I got bumped by someone's son, who was a son of a producer.
Oh.
Which was really a shame because there were so many times that I was going to be on camera in Star Trek, even just as a walk by, but it always went belly up. And the one time that I could have really done it was during the rec room scene in the first picture.
Mm-hmm.
I had terrible flu that week, and I couldn't even get out of bed. And so I missed out on that whole rec room scene. But, you'd have to really look for me. You can see V Neill in there if you look. You know where to look. She's in there. She made it, but it's remarkable she didn't get the flu from me because we were living together at the time. So, we were an item. So, but yeah, on the Undiscovered Country, basically I just did sculpting, and Richard wouldn't let me do the ears. I said, "Come on, let me do the ears. You guys never get it right. No, you've had your chance." But the problem is like, if you're watching Strange New Worlds right now, I don't know who's doing the prosthetics on that, but they know what the heck they're doing, because his ears, for the first time since the motion picture in the original series, really look like the ears that basically Wah Chang sculpted and Chambers refined and really made nice. Whereas in all the other pictures, and I was right there when it happened, when the other makeup artist was brought in on the first motion picture, we'd been shooting with my ears all along. He decided that he didn't like them. He didn't like my mold, so I'm going to redo them. I said, "Don't do that." He says, "No, I'm going to redo them." And when I saw him, I said, "Charlie, those are too short and stubby. They don't look anything like the original ears from the TV show." And he said, "Steve, nobody's going to care. A pointed ear is a pointed ear." And I said, "You're in the big leagues now. You're going to regret this, because they will notice." And they did. So I'm watching Strange New Worlds, and I'm pointing out to Mary, I said, "You saw me profile shots." I said, those ears are exactly correct. They have the right sweep, the right height, the right shape, and they're a little bit more realistic, but but have the same feel, as well as his acting. Even though he doesn't look like Nimoy, he certainly conveys Spock quite well, better than anyone has who's tried. So
yeah,
so,
I've got to admit I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I was curious about the Klingon prosthetics. So, and this may be a random question, but how did you decide? When you're making them, when you're churning these out, how do you decide what's going to be different about each one? You mentioned like one you aimed to have it be like the one in the motion picture. Did you just try different things, or did you have a plan?
Exactly it.
Okay.
It was exactly it. I had a bunch of life mask foreheads, and I wasn't the only one sculpting them. There were a couple other people, but I was cranking them out pretty fast. And so I think pretty much I did the bulk of them. And I just kept doing variations on a theme, different looks. We didn't have any drawings or anything, and we didn't want to make them look like the one Scream Mad George did, which were very kabuki looking and very stylized. I mean, I love George and I love his work, but it was too stylized. We need to stick to the Star Trek look. And there was always that problem with Star Trek, because you go to another film and you get new people in there, and 90% of them weren't Star Trek fans. They could care less about Star Trek. It was just another dumb science fiction program. And I'm really glad to see that Paramount and CBS have finally realized that, no, it's not just another dumb science fiction program. The people who love it really care about it. And if you don't cater to their, what they want to see,
Yep.
you're going to lose it. And it's just amazing. They weren't even going to do Strange New Worlds. They didn't want anything to do with doing a Pike show. That was for Discovery, but the demand from the fans was so high. And now they're reaping the awards because, they're all saying, "Oh, it's like having the old show back," and this is something they needed to have stuck to all along.
I love it so much.
You are so accurate. We actually talked about this on a previous episode. It's strange. We all are Trekkies or Trekkers to a certain extent. James being the most, but it's the one that feels the most.
Yeah,
it just feels it all the way down.
Wait till you see season 3 of Picard.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I'll be so.
Where did you see that look? Did you see that
I know.
look?
I'm pretty close friends with some very key people on that. So and if you watched the new trailer for it, did you?
Actually,
I don't think I've seen the new one yet.
I don't think I've seen the new trailer.
There's a trailer for Picard season 3.
I need to go out and look at it.
Yeah.
You'll see somewhat what I'm talking about.
Okay. I was not a fan of season 2.
No.
We have
It dragged
previously.
on. It dragged on for me. It did.
One of our previous guests, though, was Tim Storms, who is the stunt double for Patrick Stewart, and
Right.
He had some very interesting talking about doubling someone, and he also doubled in for Logan and some other films and projects, and so it's very interesting to think about, to hear the behind the scenes stories on so much of that. But I heard about the returning of several people for season 3, and I was like, okay, you got me. I'm there. I'll have to see it. So
well, they've also the mistake they made was not hiring back Michael Okuda, Rick Sternbach, and Doug Drexler. Huge mistake. And but Doug's back working on it, and I believe Michael is too.
Okay.
And I talk to Doug more often because we've been friends since like the 80s. And so a lot of other people who they brought back who are really contributing to the look of it and the feel of it being more the Star Trek, the Roddenberry Star Trek that we all loved. So
yeah.
So
all right. So
okay.
I've got so many questions, but I want to get to. I'm sitting here trying to pick which rabbit hole do I go down. So I'm going to go down. We've had Steve Mitchell on here. I don't know if you know Steve Mitchell. He directed or he's one of the people that made the Larry Cohen documentary, King Cohen.
Yeah, I was really shocked that I wasn't involved in that because Larry and I were good friends.
Yeah, I noticed you have tons of you work with a ton of his movies.
So Steve did 2 episodes with us, and we didn't know each other then. Now that we know each other, I will go back in because he's supposed to come back and do a part 3.
Right.
What happened there? Because you, sir, I mean, I could go on for days. I mean, Q, the stuff, Edgar Hoover. I mean,
Full Moon High.
Told me to Return to Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
You hung with him a lot.
My name was in the credits over and over again, and
right.
The first picture that Larry and I ever worked on together, the reason I got that was, Rick Baker had done the It's Alive movie with him. and Rick was starting to get a little on the popular side, and he didn't want to work with Larry on another picture. And he said, well, I liked Larry. He had to, it was an acquired taste.
He had a demonstrative personality, right?
And,
He had
and again, he just used to split my gut.
yeah.
Funny son of a bitch. But Rick kind of like, okay, I'm done with that. But I recommended you, Steve. And he's got this film. He just needs this little bit of work done in it. And, you know, and I said, well, thanks, Rick, because Rick really helped start. He's one of the people that really helped start my career besides Fred Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with Larry and he was real happy. And then, you know, another picture came up. He called me. And he used to call me the famous Steve Neill. He did up to the day he passed. You know, is this Steve Neill? And so this is the famous Derry Cohen. No, I want to talk to the famous Steve Neill. He was just this character. Okay. So I did all those pictures with him, you know.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last picture I did with him, but you named them all.
I named most of them. I
God told me to. Secret Files of J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
The Stuff. Return to Salem's Lot.
Is Return to Salem's Lot the last one you did with him? That may be.
It might have been, yeah. Yeah. In fact, he still had all the props and things in his closet. The last time I went up and saw him, you know, about a few months before he passed, he gave me back some of the stuff. He kept everything, and unfortunately, it's just rotting away. It's just so old. But I had a good time working with him. I really did. He was hard to work with, but basically, like James Cameron, you do with hard-ass directors is you just give them exactly what they're paying you to do.
Yeah.
And if they're unhappy with something, you fix it. You know, you just fix it. You just don't give them any crap, you know. And the thing I noticed about low budget films or medium budget films, because Larry always had money. He always had plenty of money on his productions. He always had the best everything, Panavision cameras, everything. But you just work them. You know, if they get mad and they get a little bent out of shape, you just let it roll off. And what you would see is that people try butting heads with them. Now, when you go to films like Ghostbusters, you got a guy like Ivan Reitman,
yeah,
who can be difficult to work with as well.
Yeah, but we don't hear that as much.
You didn't see anybody give him, you know, any shit on the set. So, and I got along with Ivan fine, and he was another one that used to just crack me up, you know. In fact, one of my favorite moments at Ghostbusters, I'm in the arm of the chair, and I'm doing this to Sigourney over and over again, and they take the arm off the chair, and he says down to me, he says, Steve, Sigourney's got something to tell you, and just listen to her. And she explained to me that she couldn't act being hit in the face by a creature hand like that as well as if I actually did it. And of course, the hands were kind of dangerous because the claws and everything. I said, I'm going to make you black and blue if I do that. And Ivan leans over and goes, go ahead, Steve, do it. She likes it. And everybody on the set cracked up, and she cracked up. And so, yeah, she was made black and blue. In fact, the next day, you know, because we spent several days shooting that whole sequence.
Yeah,
she was black and blue, but the makeup artist just, you know, made her up and everything was fine. So, but you know, I also directed a lot of the Terror Dog scenes because I was the master puppeteer and worked with. So I had to be on stage with Ivan with the headset on, talking to the puppeteers underneath the stage while he directed me upstage, and he was always cracking the jokes and stuff. I had no problem with it. Again, you know, if he was unhappy with something, which he never was on that picture, you just fix it. And you just say, well, how can I make this better? You don't give them crap. There are a lot of emotional artists in this business to this day. And it's like, no, there's no room for emotional artists in film production. You were hired to make this monster. If it doesn't look and work like the way the director wants it to, fix it.
Yeah, because in the end,
it's,
yeah,
don't tell them that's not what you said. They always say that. Yeah, it's not what you said. You said you wanted this, and they get in big arguments. It's like, it's a waste of time. Just, okay, you're unpleased. How can we fix this? I'll fix it. I'll go home. I'll work all night in the shop, come back, make it better. And I had to do that several times in my career. And then they're so happy with you. And guess what? Next picture, they call you back.
Yeah.
So
Why is Ivan? You never hear those stories about Ivan, but Larry, you hear them. James Cameron, you hear them. Why do you think people?
Betty Davis, Larry Cullen, that horrible man. I mean,
Yeah.
I was there that night with Betty Davis, which was pretty amazing. And
Were you really?
oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I worked all the way through Full Moon High.
yeah.
And of course, I loved working with Ed McMahon. What a neat guy. That was a great thing about Larry, is I got to work with some of the most amazing actors and talents in Hollywood you can imagine. People like Lloyd Nolan, Broderick Crawford,
Mhm.
Betty Davis. I mean, he
Paul
always got me.
Sorvino.
Yeah, Paul was, when I worked on the stuff, Paul and I would just hang out in the honey wagon and just talk at length about everything for hours, because we're bored, waiting to do our scenes. And I never heard of him before. I just thought, this is nice B actor,
Mhm.
because it's like, nobody really knew who he was back then. Wasn't familiar with him, and look what he went on to. And
Right.
he was the most approachable, down to earth human being. I mean, he was just a really neat guy. So, and because of Larry, I got to work with all those amazing people. I never knew who he's going to have me make a life up mask of next. I mean, when he sent me to Broderick Crawford, it was in Hollywood somewhere, and he was up in this big apartment, high rise. I went in there, and he was just the most charming, pleasant human being. He and his wife, just amazing. And I couldn't even believe I was there, because I was pretty young, at that time. It's like, my God, it's Broderick Crawford. Jeez, So I watched his TV shows, all his movies, everything. And, he was just so nonchalant about everything. So I really appreciate that.
Well, talk a little bit about the Betty Davis incident.
Well, I mean, I was just there. She was upstairs, and the straight makeup artist was working on her. And I don't know, Larry and her got into some kind of argument, and I didn't catch all of it. I learned more about it after I saw her in that interview.
Mhm.
Was that with Dick Cavett? I can't remember who
Somebody
it was.
like that. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she would,
Yeah.
and she was
She
dead,
was-
what, a few months later? It wasn't long.
Yeah, I thought she was over the top, because I worked with Larry enough by that point to realize, he could be cantankerous. But also, people always take stuff so personally. Half the time he was kidding around,
Mm-hmm.
and if you did make him mad, he would forgive you pretty quickly. He'd get over it. And we'd all be out to dinner and laugh, and he'd be telling all these great stories about all these people he worked with, how it was like to work with Dick Smith, because he did that show. What was it? The name of that show before Twilight Zone, Way Out.
Way Out.
And the episode he directed, Dick Smith did the makeup on, which was of the guy who was kind of like a Quasimodo.
I need to see it. I haven't.
And he could. Oh, it's really scary and disturbing, because he finds this bum, and he's got this Quasimodo kind of face. He's really the ugliest man in the world. I want to make a makeup of you, and paid him very little money, treated him poorly, and he goes on stage and he's a big hit. And when he comes back, he didn't take the makeup off. He can't get it off.
Yeah.
It's him.
Yeah.
And so he would tell the stories about, I knew Dick Smith, and
Because Larry was a writer. Larry was a writer for
he was a really good writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the last thing he did that was really great was Phone Booth.
Phone Booth. Yeah.
Great film. I mean, it really was.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But he also had written another script for It's Alive, and I have it here somewhere. It was really good. I mean, it was better than any of the other ones. Of course, I worked on Island of the Alive too, and I did the creatures for that. But it was really great. But the other thing that Larry and I were seeing more and more, getting together, having lunches, and going to his house, and Mary got to know him and meet him on several occasions, and we didn't know that he was sick. And later on, I was told he was sick, but never to talk to him about it. it was terminal and all this stuff. And it's like, oh my God. And he's talking to me about doing this other, it's a live movie, but then it shifted to a script. He had the rights to do a movie version of the Invaders. Now, I loved the Invaders during the 60s. That show just was, I loved it. And I just thought it was great. I loved the ship. I loved this, and I loved the ray guns and everything. It was really a lot of fun. It was serious, one of the few that were those times. And so we were working together on developing that into a film. And had he lived, we would have worked and made the film together.
Yeah.
Which would have been fantastic. But, you know, I mean, 2 weeks before he passed, I'm on the phone with him and he's telling me about the latest version of the script. And, you know, do you really think we ought to have that same spaceship, that old thing from the 60s? Do you think it's really good? And I said, yeah, you don't want to change that. You know, you want that iconic saucer and everything. And so he was writing all along.
Go ahead.
He was writing every day.
Yeah. Well, but that had to keep him in good spirits, though, knowing.
Oh, it did. I don't know if you saw those pictures of me and Larry standing together on his porch at the mansion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can tell if you look at him in the pictures there that there's something not right, you know, yet he was making the jokes and we just had the best time. We went out to lunch and, you know, so.
Right.
Yeah, I miss him. I miss him. He had the same phone number for over like 30 something years. You know, it's still in my book. I knew it by heart up till recently, you know.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, Chad.
All right. Again, I'm like Joe. I'm like, where do we go? So I'm gonna skip. I want to, because I am a big fan of this particular actor, and you're listed as working with him exclusively on Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hyde.
Oh,
Oliver Reed.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually just did a live show, and I actually brought up an interesting story of Oliver Reed and how his drunken antics, you know, basically train wrecked the movie. I was wondering, did you have
that movie?
No. This it was Condor Man that I was covering. You know, he was like he got drunk and actually threw his suit into the river in Paris, in outside of Paris, I think is where it was, and they had no money to buy a new suit, and he knew that going in before. He was just, you know, being Oliver. So I just didn't know if you had any good stories of working with Oliver Reed.
Oh yeah, I have some. I mean, the way I got that job was Rob Bottin called me up one day and said, "Hey Steve, I got this great gig for you. I can't do it. I don't think I can do this. And it's working with Oliver Reed, and you're going to have to work with him very closely. And I think you're the perfect guy for it, you know, because Rob wasn't a party guy. He really wasn't. He was a really straight and clean kind of guy, as far as I know. And he just thought, from what he knew about me, that I could stomach working with Oliver Reed. And so I took the job. I was intimidated by it. And, you know, the first time I met him was at a rented apartment he had over in Beverly Hills, where we made the life mask. Rick Stratton came over and V came over too, because V would often get involved just for fun to work with me. After we broke up, we remained really close friends. And so she came over because she wanted to meet him too. And a whole bunch of famous actors and actresses came over all throughout the day. I think half the cast of the Poseidon Adventure visited there. You know, and that was pretty amazing. We made the life mask, and we got along real well. But you know, if you look at pictures of me back then, there's a picture of me with him in the kitchen the day we did the life mask, and he's got the bald cap on. And there I am, and with my gold chain hanging on and my long hair, looking like some kind of rock star. He's got his arm around me, this big shitty grin on his face. It's on my website somewhere.
Yeah.
In fact, if you just type in Steve Neill and Oliver Reed, it comes up in Google, I'm pretty sure. Then, you know, I had to do all these prosthetics for him and test makeups. And I got to say, the guy was a total professional throughout that entire movie. He never once gave me any trouble. He was very, very concerned about the makeup. He would always politely ask me to come over, looking in the mirror, and say, "Steve, you think this is going to show?" Oh God, thanks. I'll fix that. You know, so we work together very well. But the stories, yeah, I was told that I'd have to start drinking with him at 2 PM, that he like stole Shania and orange juice. So for the longest time, I would make up the drink and not put hardly any vodka in mine, but he got onto that one day when he grabbed it, smelled it, and said, let me pour you a proper drink. And, you know,
At 2 o'clock.
yeah, and we'd get a little sloshed, not terrible, and because you know I just tried not to have another one, and he didn't really either, you know, but you never know it. I mean, the guy just man, that camera rolled. He got his lines perfectly all the way through. Never once made a mistake. Never once screwed up the makeup, and it was elaborate. Eye contacts, teeth, prosthetics. Mark Siegel worked with me on that and ran all the foam. He's the same guy who ran the foam for the Klingons. And so there was a lot of hard work on that, but every night I tried to escape. And he'd always, you know, like the night of my birthday, he'd grab me and say, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to go home, get some sleep. Said, no, you're not. It's your birthday. We're going to go out and paint the town red. And it's like, oh God. So he dragged me and Karen Kubek, the makeup lady, girl on the town. And I mean, we ended up at the L'Hermitage, which is a very fancy restaurant at the L'Hermitage, where he was staying. He had moved to the penthouse of the L'Hermitage, and we went to the restaurant there. Going up in the elevator, I said, they're never going to let us in there. I mean, I'm still in my set clothes. I got makeup, green and colors on me, and he had it on his shirt. And there's this guy in the elevator, and he's looking at him. He's saying, "You're Oliver Reed." And Oliver said, "Well, yes, I am. Who do I have the pleasure of meeting?" And the guy told him his name, and they shook hands. And he's looking at the guy kind of funny. I go, "What's he up to? Oh God, I hope he's not going to start a fight or something, you know." And he said, "I need your shirt." Bought the guy's shirt off him on the spot and gave him his. And the guy runs out, saying, "I got a Wolverine shirt." It was just.
He apparently must have had a thing with clothes.
Yeah, so we get up to the top, and the guy standing outside the restaurant sees us coming, and you could, his head was almost shaking before we even got to him. And Reed said, "I'll take care of this." And he goes over there. Karen and I walk back, and I could see the guy shaking his head, but he just kept pulling out another 100 and another 100 and another 100. Reed was loaded. He had money, family money. He didn't need it from the industry. He liked to work. Oh yeah, that's what he told me. He liked to work because he liked to work. He liked doing the work. He was passionate about it. He didn't care about the money. Finally, the guy let us in, and of course, they gave me a tie to put on and all that stuff. So we're sitting there, and he's buying me this big, expensive meal, and we're drinking port, and then I don't know, cognac, and this and that. We're mixing, you know. I mean, it's like, and I'm looking around, and he's kind of looking to see where I'm looking at. I said, "Is that Gene Hackman over there?" And Gene was looking at me kind of weird, you know, because we had met when I was working with Francis Ford Coppola in San Francisco on the Conversation set. We had lunch. So he could, you know, this guy looks familiar, you know. But he saw Reed, and Reed said, "That sure is." And he got up. And you could just see this look of terror come over Hackman's face as he went over to his table and dragged him back to our table to sit and have a drink. And poor Karen was so drunk, she passed out face down. We had to keep pulling her up. Anyway, I forget kind of what happened after that, except that he wanted to start a brawl in there with the guy at the bar because he likes to brawl. And I said, you can't do that here. Why not? I said, "You're in America. The cops will come and put us in jail." "They will?" I said, "Yeah. They don't just tell you to go home and sleep it off. This isn't the UK, you know, where they're used to brawling in the pubs." "Oh, okay." So we went up to his penthouse, and I'm up there in the penthouse, and he's trying to drink me under the table, and he can't do it. And he says, "Steve, what are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Irish and Russian." He says, "That's it. It's the Russian." Because he was Russian too, half Russian. He says, "I'll never be able to drink under the table. I can't do it." And then he disappeared, and where'd he go? And he comes back in, and he's showing me his hands, and there's kind of these like marks in it from hanging on something. Well, he was hanging off the banister. This was like a scene out of My Favorite Year.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was
like,
thinking.
oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
supposed to watch this guy. He's hanging off a banister, several stories up. And he comes back in, and then he wants to show me some boxing. And so, all right, fine, and so, he's throwing punches at me, and I'm throwing them at him, just, casually. And then he finally goes like that, catches me right there, knocks me flat to the floor. And he goes from being like kind of tough, I'm going to show you how to fight, to, oh God, are you all right? And he gets down there, and he gets down really close to me. Are you okay? And I can get him. Oh, I'm just, knocked him back like that. And he just goes like this. I like you. And so we went back on, sat on the couch, and we talked, and Karen passed out. So he went and got a blanket, put it over Karen. And somehow I drove home, which I regret to this day, because, I don't approve of drinking and driving, but I had to get home. I mean, I had to, all the makeup supplies and all the things that there. And I drove my little Italian sports car home, and we were waking up the next day going, and drove down very hungover to the set. And there was the honey wagon at 4 a.m. with the lights glowing out of it. And I walk in, and he's sitting there all ready to go. And he starts laughing at me, and he goes, I go, what? I look in the mirror, and I've got a black eye.
Oh no.
And we got to work, and we did a 4-hour makeup job on him. We went out to the set, and we had a great day. And that's what it was like working with Oliver Reed. And the last night we were there, I was there. He had some of his mates from England, and we said our goodbyes, and because we got to be quite close. We hung out all the time together.
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't see him again after that.
Just how the industry is.
Yeah, it is. But, it was really a memorable thing in my career. I was able to ask him what it was like working on Hammer Pictures, and he just loved talking about it. He didn't mind at all. I talked about the eye contacts hurting and, that kind of thing. It was the same way with Christopher Lee when I worked with him, too. He had very fond memories of working on the Hammer films, and his dear friend Peter Cushing,
Right.
That was another. Now, see, I thank Charlie Band for that. I mean, I got to work with Christopher Lee, which to me was huge. Make a life mask of him and do all that. So,
well, I know we've got to wrap up in a second, and I apologize, but so the thing is, we do this, and then we do a lot of this convention work, and a lot of these people are our heroes, and we've been lucky to meet them, and I do fairly well. There's only been a couple. I can't imagine I would have to, when I interviewed George Romero, I had to kind of take a second by myself before I went on stage. Does that make sense? It's just, It was bigger than life to me.
yeah.
I would have had the same. What'd you say?
Right. That meeting I had with Gene Roddenberry and Robert Wise.
Right.
It's a good thing It's a good thing I didn't pass out.
I mean, Robert Wise worked on Citizen Kane, much less if we just start talking about his, the
Did
rest.
Here Stood Still, Drama and a Strain. I mean,
Right.
And Gene, who I already knew, but but just, these are amazing giants. So I know what you mean.
So Christopher Lee, did you just take a second? What did you do to just prepare yourself? Do you even remember?
Well, I had to go over to his apartment, high rise in Beverly Hills. And when I got up there to
How bad for you? I'm just giving you a hard time. I was like, how bad for you?
What was interesting is the end of door open.
Yeah.
Now, there was security and everything, but once you were in there, you go up to where his apartment is, and the door was open. It was hardly an apartment. It was a huge place, but whatever. I don't think we were calling them condos yet, or maybe we were, but
yeah.
I walked down this entryway into it, which was a library of books, for one thing. I remember all these books. And you turn, and he says, "I'll be right with you, Steve." And he was in the back somewhere. And I go into the living room, and Jesus, I'm on a Hammer set here. I mean, it really looked like the furniture, everything looked like it was something right out of Hammer. He says, "Have a seat. I'll be right with you." So I sit down, and I'm not feeling terribly intimidated much,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there, and out he comes. And of course, it was all carpeted. So, like the films where he played Dracula, you couldn't hear his feet. He just sort of floated across the carpet and bent down to me and introduced himself to me like Dracula, introduced himself to the Parker. It was just like, and he had that little widow's peak, and he was wearing a tube that day because they shaved his head for something, and he said the hair never grew back. But you had to look really close to see it was a tube. And so as I'm making the life mask, he's telling me all kinds of stories about Peter, and he was really open to talking about Hammer films. And then throughout the production, we sat and talked daily, and everybody did because he has this charisma. Everyone wanted to talk to him, and he loved singing opera, so he sang for us, and it was a great experience. And this is the thing about working with people like Charlie Band and Larry Cohen and other directors, Jim Wynorski, people like that. People are really great about putting these people down, and they never really worked with them well or for very long, or never really got to know them. But Roger Corman is another one. I mean, these guys gave me all the rope I wanted to hang myself with. And so I didn't do that. And they enabled me to be able to work with some truly great people that were on the tail end of the great Hollywood that I could have never imagined I'd ever meet or work with. And that was incredible. And so I'm eternally grateful to all these people, Toby included, for the opportunity they gave me. Today, new people getting into the field, chances are they're not going to have that. Joe Belasco was another person who helped me when I first came to Hollywood. And the first thing I did was work with him making a nose cast on Martin Sheen. And what a nice guy he was, I mean, so right off the bat, with my career, I was, I went from being an intern at the Zoetrope and being friends with Francis Ford Coppola, who, and to coming down here and working all these B pictures, which then eventually led to the A pictures. So it was, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I'm not grateful to these people. Most of them are all gone now. Everyone else is not working anymore.
Yeah.
I can't imagine one day, I don't want to imagine not continuing on with this work, which is why I'm still running a studio of my own and doing as much work as I can, even making my own films. So
right. Mr. Neill, thank you so much. We could do another 2 hours. We didn't get to Francis. We didn't. Chad wanted to talk about Fredo and Ray, but we promised you an hour.
Oh, Fred, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was Deep Space, was it?
Yeah, Deep Space.
Yeah, Deep Space. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can always have me come back.
I would love for you to come back. In fact, I'm going to put you on record saying, are you okay if I reach out in the next couple of months?
Yeah,
hopefully
sure.
we weren't too bad. All right.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate you caring about this stuff, especially the old B pictures,
Yeah, and we
didn't talk
appreciate
about Fright Night either, but
no, we didn't talk about Tom Holland, whom I've talked to over the phone, but we've never I have a whole page of stuff that I didn't even get to, but I also want to be considerate of your time. So we'd love to have you back. But before we go, would you please talk about your website really quick if people are I mean, I didn't even get to talk to you about your rockets, but please talk about your website.
Well, what about the airplanes I fly? In fact, I'm in the latest issue of the Academy of Model Aeronautics, their magazine. Let's see, I need to put up another browser here for myself real quick here, because as long as I have this page, it's Steve Neill's, and it's all one word, Steve Neill's. And that's Neills.
Yeah.
Steve Neills.art.blog. And it's actually a website. Where'd you guys go? You're here somewhere.
That's okay. You've looked at us long enough, man. There's no reason to torture yourself.
There we are. Okay, I got it. I had a lot of windows up. And
that's a lot of ugly to look at it all at once, bud.
Not at all. It's a website, and it has a store on there where I've got all kinds of masks and things from famous TV shows like Outer Limits and Star Trek that no one's complained about so far me doing. I mean, Paramount's aware of what I do. They They have written to me before when I was building the big enterprise model, which
Yeah.
I was really known for, and said, don't sell too many. We're okay. We really appreciate your work on Star Trek and your passion for Star Trek, but just cool it for now, and then you can sell some more later. I was blown away when I got that letter. I have it around here somewhere. I was like, who writes and it tells you, usually you get a cease and desist, but they've been okay with me because I don't sell a lot of stuff, and I'm just selling it to the fans. And it's really not about the money. It's just I like doing the work, and I like the idea people are out there collecting it. And that's on that website as well. Plus pictures from my career, pictures of me with Larry Cohen and some of the people we've been talking about, and Brad Dourif, and who was also incredible to work with. I love Brad. And there's links to other websites I have, including the rocketry website. I don't want to have one for model aviation because I just have too many websites. So, but I'm a crazy aerospace wingnut, and I go flying every Sunday, and I live, eat, breathe, and sleep it. So always building a new one.
All right, Steve. Thank you so much. We're going to hit stop.
You betcha.
And then we're going to say goodbye to you as soon as I hit stop recording. So this has been Steve Neill. This has been Bonehead. Thank you.